per buck for the two-lane structure. Further to that, simply we are able as your designers to do what you would like us to do in terms of meeting bridge code and provincial guidelines and regulations for road safety, flood safety, and all the rest. Whatever we're directed to design, we have to make sure that we meet those requirements. So in this case, a one-lane bridge can work. A two-lane bridge provides, in our analysis, a better cost benefit. But ultimately, it is up to council to review the costs and the benefits and decide which direction to go. In which case, assuming that a two-lane bridge, as indicated in the EA, is the direction of council, we can continue with the design documents and get out to tender probably late this winter, early spring. If direction is to go with a one-lane bridge, we'll need to do an addendum to the EA process. So that's 2 advertisements in a local newspaper and a 30-day waiting period, at which time, if there are no requests for a Part 2 order to the Minister of the Environment, you are free to proceed. So changing it from a two-lane to a one-lane at this juncture may delay construction until the following construction season. We may, if no issues arise, be able to complete the design during that review process. And as long as we don't have any further delays, we have an opportunity to do the one-lane bridge if you choose during this construction season, if we didn't have any further delays. If there are any questions regarding the content of the report, I'm at your service.
Councillor Huffman.
Through you, Mayor, to Ryan. Okay, quick question. I'm confused. When you said if it's going from a two-lane bridge to a one-lane bridge, there'll be a delay. Isn't that bridge already a one-lane bridge?
It is. The delay comes from the need through provincial regulation to do an addendum to the municipal class environmental assessment. So the process that happens there is we went through a 5-year process of collecting information and coming up with a preferred solution. We studied a number of alternatives, and the preferred solution was to replace the bridge with a two-lane bridge. So at the time, Norfolk Council had endorsed that preferred solution. So at this juncture, if we want to amend that, we have to do an addendum to the EA and advertise it in the newspaper.
So the EA part was already, okay. That's the hard part, right? When some things happen kind of prior to our arrival and just kind of...
Absolutely.
And another question for you, representing Ward 7, and I've been contacted by numerous people. There was a plan in works that when this bridge on County Road 45 was decommissioned, per se, that it would possibly be welcome in Waterford. Is that still possible, or that doesn't impact that arrangement, or?
Certainly, and through the mayor, to answer your question, we were approached by local groups that we were involved with when we rehabilitated the Black Bridge in Waterford, which has become a key component of tourism here in Norfolk. As well, we were fundamental in bringing the Meadama Bridge from Haldimand County to Waterford, and it's my understanding that they want to complete sort of the crown jewel and get the last piece in place. And in discussion with the group there, Mr. Koistra and some of the others, we looked at a number of other bridges that are in the municipality that could suit their needs and be applicable for a pedestrian bridge application. This particular bridge on Road 45 is the right length, and it could be suitably rehabilitated for pedestrian use at that application in that location. Now, it's my understanding that the group is yet to come forward with requests or deputation to council or anything like that, but to answer your question, that is an opportunity that you may have presented to you in the future, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Councillor Van Passen.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to the deputation, the design that you're working on for a two-lane bridge, would that be at a speed limit of the 80 kilometers an hour of the road, or would it be designed to slow down like we do now?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to answer Councillor Van Passen's question. Currently, most concession roads have an 80-kilometer or an unposted speed limit. At this location, the design that is being contemplated for a two-lane bridge would incorporate an 80-kilometer-an-hour speed limit per the design requirements. If we consider the low-volume road and we use a one-lane structure, the speed limit by regulation should be reduced to less than 50 kilometers per hour.
Because that would be one of my concerns. As soon as we fix the bridge, the cars per day count will go up. We're currently, I think I read 353. A one-lane bridge is only for under 400. If we fix the bridge and open the speed limit up, the average daily count of cars, I think, will increase beyond the 400. So I hope the road is designed for that.
Any further questions? Councillor Taylor, sorry.
You said during the EA process, you may be able to have the designs completed if there are no further delays, which would allow us to go to tender this year. Are there generally delays in this process, though?
Through Mayor Chop, to answer your question, that is a good question. At this stage, we have everything we need to complete our design. In fact, the engineering design itself is, I would estimate, at roughly 90 or 95% complete. At the time when council had given us direction to cease work on the project, we were just about to commence doing our detailed design drawings and assembling tender documents and specifications. So to answer your question, at this stage, no, there should be no further delays. The only thing stopping us is the number of hours in the day to get the job done.
Councillor Michelli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just to review then, if a single lane bridge option was chosen, that would have to be constructed in 2020. Is that correct?
Through Mayor Chop to the councillor, it wouldn't have to be constructed in 2020. It's just likely that the period of time that it'll take to go through the EA addendum process would delay completion and tender. When we get to looking at procurement, typically if we have a project that's out for tender, we have a number of weeks that it's out for tender. The tender will close. We analyze the bids and provide a report to staff, and then staff then brings the report to council. Council reviews it at committee and, of course, approves the project under a bylaw at council. That process can take, I think, roughly from the time we close a tender to the time, and of course, you probably know more than I do, can take 2 months to complete. At which time the successful bidder would be then given authority to commence work and order any products that are required, a truss, prefabricated concrete, whatever the case may be, which can take some time to create, build, and ship. With most years with bridge construction, we battle in December to get the project completed in good weather. A lot of times we can get them done quicker, but a full scope replacement such as this one is anticipated to take, if we begin in July, as required by MNR and MOE, that we would be completing sometime in early December. So if the process of tendering gets delayed, then the domino effect takes place, in which case we would likely be able to start construction in 2019, but we probably wouldn't be able to finish it in 2019. We'd likely have to pause during the winter and then complete it in the spring of 2020.
Okay, so that, and I realize this takes some speculation, but so it is possible that the construction would start in 2019 and then in early 2020 completion?
Just to clarify, for a one-lane structure?
Yes.
Yes, it is possible.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Columbus.
Mayor, to clarify, right, you said the difference between the price of a two-lane concrete and the portable one lane is 10%? Is that what you said?
To answer that question through the mayor, to you, Councillor Columbus, essentially, I mean, that you're really boiling it down to the brass tacks. But yes, in this particular case, it's a 10% difference. That is site-specific. In a lot of cases, we don't have the road overtopping and flooding issues with public safety. Most bridge replacements that we do in Haldeman, Norfolk, and Brant don't require that extensive road work. But in this particular case, given the length and breadth of the scope of work, it works out to roughly a 10% difference, yes.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. You talk about the lifespan being significantly longer with concrete structures. Having an engineering degree myself, I'm a little bit surprised at that statement. Would you not say that there's bridges in Norfolk County that are concrete that have been replaced at far less than 50 years?
To answer that question, I'm basing our opinion on the roughly 3,700 OSIM inspections that we provide to bridges in Norfolk, Haldeman, and Brant since 2009. We roughly find that, and this is detailed in the report, that the steel bridges tend to deteriorate much more rapidly in chloride environments. Where it comes to the concrete bridges, we are typically seeing rehabilitations at year 35, plus minus 5 years, and again at year 50, and extending them out to well beyond 75 years. A good example of this are the 3 bridges we just finished rehabilitating for Norfolk County this summer with Finbuilt Contracting. The reaching through my memory, concession 13 Townsend, I believe, which is out in front of the Waterford Water Treatment Plant, was rehabilitated in its 60th year just this last summer for $360,000, and we expect to get another 30 to 40 years out of it.
So the rehabilitation, if it's kind of historical that it's happened at 35 years and again 50 years here in Norfolk County, has that cost been factored into the overall cost of the concrete structure?
Yes. So if you take a look at the graphs that we provided in the executive summary, the first one, the figure shows the initial construction costs of the 7 options considered, which include the Alabama Pioneer Bailey as recommended by a member of the public, as well as the Canadian counterpart, the maybe temporary structures, as well as through AIL bridges, Big R bridges, Algonquin bridges, Iron bridges. These companies manufacture modern pony trusses, which are really nice looking structures, but they tend to be the most expensive. On the second graph in the executive summary, and I'm noticing with Councillor Van Passen's copy. Oh no, I'm familiar with it. It's not colorized. We had given a colorized one so that it's much easier to see the differences. But in that second graph, what we're showing is the full costs over the lifespan of the truss, whether it's prefabricated concrete or prefabricated steel, which includes not only the initial construction, but the rehabilitation costs, depending on what type of bridge it is, whether it's 20, 40, and 60 years or 35 and 50 years, as well as annual maintenance costs for washing, cleaning, things like that. The graph, the third graph that we provided, breaks it down so that you can compare those numbers on a year-to-year basis because the different structures have different anticipated lifespans. So the final graph shows, if we're comparing apples to apples on a year-to-year basis, what each structure costs.
Have you guys constructed a prefab or installed a prefab or been involved in that? And obviously not in Norfolk County. Where would that have taken place?
Yes, actually we have done prefab. Most of the bridges that we do are prefab. I think maybe for clarification you're asking about prefabricated steel trusses. But the Waterford Bridge replacement, we used a prefabricated a prefabricated Bailey bridge there. For the temporary road around the bridge while it was being replaced. In other applications, they're not typically used simply because of the durability and the lifespan and the comparability to the concrete precast prefabricated product tends to outlast.
So in my experience, prefab bridges actually are kind of a modern invention, are they not? Because they've allowed quicker construction times than traditional concrete poured bridges. they are lower maintenance typically. There's a number of benefits, right, that makes them a more modern invention than traditional concrete.
With respect to answer your, there's multi-facets to that question. The first aspect would be less maintenance, when in fact a steel structure requires more maintenance. The concrete bridges don't require washing through manufacturer's recommendations as much as the pony trusses or the Pioneer type Bailey bridges or maybe bridges through Algonquin. Talking to the fabricators, which we spoke to, the engineers and estimators at Pioneer, Bailey Bridges in Alabama, as well as at Algonquin and AIL, they're recommending that for uncoated steel multiple times a year. In one instance, they actually recommended monthly. We recognize that that's not practical for road staff to do. Typically, a concrete bridge is cleaned and washed of salt and debris annually. We recommend that it's done biannually in the spring and the fall. So we tend to find that the concrete structures need less maintenance throughout the course of their lifespan.
The one thing for me that I don't see factored in here is there are other benefits as well to, and you mentioned it at the beginning in terms of tourism and so on, that can be a driver for, and that is typically why people might install a bridge like this, areas. In fact, it forms part of the exemption from the MTO when they wrote it up, that the reason they allow this single-lane bridges to continue with lower traffic levels was because it could keep the historical or heritage kind of type nature of roadways. So I know sometimes that's difficult to quantify, but there certainly is a value to that, correct? That is not you haven't, or have you incorporated that into these charts?
We have, and to answer that question, in the appendices of the report, we provided an excerpt from the exceptions to the bridge code. And the driving factor of the one lane versus two lane is purely for financial reasons, for cost considerations if we're in a crunch for money.
Okay, but so my question though is, have you quantified some of the additional kind of benefits in terms of tourism and keeping a you know?
Sure. I think I further understand your question. Yes, to answer your question, Mayor Chop, the tourism factors, economic environment, social environment, cultural environment, heritage environment, all of these things were considered during the Schedule B Class EA and were all incorporated into the project file report.
But they're not incorporated into the cost, into these charts, is what I'm at. We've got maintenance, we've got the rehabilitation at 24 years. So when we're looking at these charts of the value, of the comparative value, that's not being included in there.
No, the sort of intangible costs, something like that nature, there wasn't time enough over the holidays to compile that kind of information. With respect, I think it would be difficult for me as a bridge engineer to quantify the value of tourism that a one-lane pony truss bridge at this location would bring. I wonder if perhaps there's data that the county has today because it is a one-lane bridge. But outside of that, that's sort of outside of the scope of work from me as the designer of the structure.
But you agree that there is value in those areas?
I would agree that a bridge that's attractive could bring people to it. Certainly the landscape out there is a unique one. There are quite a few bridges in Norfolk County that are single-lane pony trusses that we are struggling with to keep in operation. There are 11 structures, 7 of which are closed at the moment, and a lot of which are in your capital budget for replacements between now and 2027. Recognizing that, there are tough decisions that council has to make in terms of, you know, where do you spend $1 million when it comes to a bridge replacement?
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I have a couple questions for staff, but if somebody else would like to start, if they have any questions. Councillor Columbus?
Well, Madam Mayor, I was going to move a motion.
I'd like to ask a couple questions of staff first, if that's okay.
What's the protocol for that, Mr. Clerk?
It's a bit unusual through you, Madam Mayor. It's a bit unusual because we are generally a bit more informal with budget deliberations. If we were going to be following the rules by the book, if somebody wanted to present a motion, we would have to entertain that, and that would frame the debate going forward. But budget processes, it's at the discretion of the chair.
Okay, so I will permit the question of staff, and then I'd like to make a motion following that. Thanks.
So just a couple questions. I'm just curious, since we're in budget deliberations, do we not have staff members that are capable of providing rough estimates, which is what council asked for? I guess, so the second part of that question for Mr. Baird is also, what was the cost of this 91-page report to the taxpayer?
Mayor Chop, we don't have any structural engineers on staff, and to have a wholesome summary has been provided by the Valley Group, I think provides the information that you need to make a decision, an informed decision, and that was our goal. The cost to do this work is approximately $12,000.
The other question I have for Mr. Johnson, for the Waterford Bridge, has that been included if the Bailey Bridge was to be moved to Waterford? Has that been included in the budget completely? For the move, for the design, for the engineering to get that bridge up there?
Mayor Chop, if I could jump in. No, this is just, the funding is just for the bridge replacement. The group that came to council, there was some correspondence back in the midsummer, I believe, and where the group from Waterford expressed interest about perhaps repurposing of that bridge. At that time, there was no discussion about were they going to contribute financially to have the bridge, broken down into manageable pieces and transported to the site, and the site preparation in Waterford. Those would be discussion items that would come forward afterwards. This council needs to decide, do we want to keep that Bailey Bridge? Maybe there's a shorter span that we could use it for emergency purposes, or do you want to dispose of it or scrap it? These are decisions that would be before you in the near future as we move forward.
So so for clear, so there's no money in the capital budget currently for that bridge to go to Waterford. Just a question for you, Councillor Huffman. Could you provide a bit of background? It's in terms of tourism and some keeping the Bailey Bridge in Waterford. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. And like Ryan had, he had voiced it very well. It's kind of that crown jewel in terms of having access and with all of the other bridges there, and obviously the Black Bridge being a pinnacle point. And in order, and to kind of in terms of the fiscal responsibility, I just want to ask Mr. Cribbs, oh, for heaven's sakes. The Waterford Group did contribute financially to the last bridge going to Waterford, correct? Yep, sorry.
Through the mayor, my recollection, and again, I was in a previous capacity, but they did quite a bit of fundraising, and I understand if you're referring to the Black Bridge, is it Black Bridge or is it the smaller pedestrian pieces?
There was a smaller one since the Black Bridge. I know that there was a lot of fundraising regarding the Black Bridge.
Absolutely.
But I just want to say, I certainly, I will go forward and say, I certainly do not expect that or think that the Waterford Group is anticipating that this would arrive free of charge, that they would be involved in fundraising and would be contributing to the cost of the transportation of the bridge
Contributing,
to
but there would be.
And in terms of the trail system that we now have in Waterford, and with the bridge system, with the aesthetics, with the development of the water along Shadow Lake, with the farmers market and the dragon boat races and all kinds of things like that, and as well looking at the development that the LPRCA is doing to Waterford North, this would be a wonderful addition to the town of Waterford in Ward 7.
So just if I can say just one last thing, I didn't mean that to come across as Waterford needs to raise money. My point
No, I
was-
just want to let you know that we will be fiscally responsible.
My comment was more, we've gone through a capital budget deliberation, and I have seen $0 shaved off of it, and I wonder when the last time that is that happened. And so in order to do other projects, like move this Bailey Bridge to Waterford, as I said in my opening remarks on the first day, money doesn't grow on trees, and so we need to find money from different places. And while 200,000 or 300,000 might not seem like a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, it does allow us to do other projects like appropriating this bridge to another location. So with that, I will pass back to you, Mr. Columbus, Councillor Columbus, for your motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I would like to put a motion on the floor that the county proceed to tender for a 2-lane concrete bridge structure to replace the County Road 45 bridge.
Okay, discussions on the motion? Or, sorry, seconded by Councillor Geisen. And discussions on the motion.
Can I speak to
Councillor
it?
Columbus?
Yes. I actually put a similar motion on the floor back in December, probably a month ago, and it was lost, and it was deferred to go to study a 1-lane portable bridge along with the concrete bridge. So here we are, $12,000 more spent later on a consultant, and we're wasting time. This bridge is a county road. It's on a county road, County Road 45. You know, we could say, I know that 1-lane bridges certainly are charming, but I think we have to look with an eye to the future for the next 50 to 75 years. We heard that with respect to a 1-lane bridge, we got to keep the speed limit less than 50 kilometers an hour. There's talk about you're supposed to have 400 cars, less than 400 cars. I think in 75 years, there probably will be more than 400 cars using that road. I see just aside, somebody's inventing a flying car. I saw that in Ontario Farmer this week. And the other thing is, it's about the farm vehicles that have to cross there so that the farmers don't have to drive 6 or 7 kilometers around, because this bridge right now is closed. And we can't wait to have a study done, which the consultant mentioned, up until 2020. It should be open as soon as possible, especially when there's only a saving of approximately 10%, is what we heard. So that's the reason I again moved the motion, and I hope the councillors see it fit to support it. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Van Passen.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. For as much as I like the idea of the lovely touristy bridge, we need to get moving on this one. That is a major arterial road. What has kept it from being that is a Bailey Bridge that's been there since the 90s. That is the direct route between London, St. Thomas, and Norfolk County, and the industrial park in Nanticoke and Haldeman. The one thing that did disappoint me with this very expensive study, I happened to read that Council in November of 2017 gave approval for the drawings to be done, and now we're January 19 and the drawings are still not done. I think if we were ready to build a bridge a month ago, I think I would have approved Mr. Columbus's original motion, but the fact that it wasn't done yet. So hopefully we could approve a 2-lane bridge, because I have the same concerns that as soon as we put in the new bridge, the traffic counts will go up, and in the future, the road will be used to its full potential, and we'll still be stuck with unless we build the 2-lane bridge, but we'll have a bottleneck on that road. So I will be supporting the motion, and hopefully it can be approved very quickly, and the drawing be done very quickly, and go to tender very quickly. Thank you.
Councillor Michelli?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. While I understand all of these points, we are, trying to come up with some way to take some money out of this capital budget. And while a 10% reduction to the one-lane bridge is not a high percentage, it's still over $200,000. And as Mayor Chop mentioned, money doesn't grow on trees. This might be a good opportunity to actually save a good chunk of money. Thank you.
Councillor Martin?
Further to that, this may be because I'm new, but I did not realize that we would be spending this much money on an additional report. I will take more responsibility to ask those questions before approving that in the future, but I truly thought that this was in an in-house discussion that we were going to research other options. Thank you.
Anything further? I'll pass the chair over. Oh, Councillor Huffman, second time.
I just want to reiterate what Councillor Martin said. I was completely unaware that this was not an in-house report that we were getting and that we were going to be spending $12,000. So in the future, I as well will be more responsible in asking that question.
I'm going to pass the chair over so I can speak to the motion as well. I too was completely unaware because the wording specifically states that council directs staff to investigate options. So I'm confused how a consultant was hired or an engineering firm without council's approval when the direction was for staff. As far as the timelines, I do find that myself a little bit difficult to believe that I had asked Mr. Baird at the first meeting whether or not we would have to go through another EA assessment, and I'm sure we could pull the tape, and he had assured me that we would not have to go through another EA assessment. And so to add on this time to say that we're not going to be able to put a prefab structure into 2020, personally, I think even for the Causeway Bridge, we should have been looking at a $6.7 million for the Causeway seems extraordinary. And there are the benefits of the prefab structures is that they are very quick to install. In fact, that's why we see them on highways all the time now, because the road does not have to be closed as long. The work can be done. You take the one bridge out, you put the other bridge in. So for me, I also, the benefits that this could bring in terms of maintaining a certain charm and characteristic to Norfolk, I think that's where we need to start putting our focus is on tourism here in the county. So I will, I'll leave the chair with you, Councillor Martin, if you'd like to carry on.
Any further discussion? Councillor Taylor.
Just wondering if Mr. Baird would like to speak to any of those comments that were made?
No, through the mayor, no, I don't. I stand by my word that, as Mr. Elliott has mentioned, the current two-lane design that has been worked on did not require an extension to the EA, but if there was an amendment or an alternate decision made, that there would be. And that was clearly articulated here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could speak one more time.
Chop.
The question then, if we're asking questions at this point, I had asked at that first meeting whether or not the EA would be sufficient if we moved forward, not today, in the first meeting in December 8th. I did ask whether or not that EA would cover a new single lane bridge. It was clear. So you're saying that an entire new EA process, like I'm hearing an addendum to it in a 30-day extension, so 30 days, and the fact that a single lane bridge is actually constructed quicker than a concrete poured bridge, seems to balance out to me. But this is suggesting that we're adding a whole other year and a half. That doesn't make sense.
Councillor Columbus.
Yes, Madam Deputy Mayor, can I ask for a recorded vote, please?
Okay, without any further discussion, we'll go on to a recorded vote, and I will hand that over to Mr. Gazelle.
I think I'm going this way this time. Oh, did I? Okay, sorry. Councillor Geisens. Yes. Councillor Rabbits.
Yes.
Councillor Columbus.
Yes.
Councillor Martin.
No.
Councillor Van Passen. Yes. Councillor Huffman.
No.
Councillor Michelli.
No.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes.
Mayor Chop.
Nope.
The motion carries.
Okay, so I guess we'll resume with the budget talks for the capital plan. She'll just have to find the money for it somewhere. No, no, I'm joking. Counselor Van Passen.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm still not done with page 2-34. We have fire vehicle replacements with enhancements. The minivan for a pickup truck, minivan for a pickup truck, minivan for a pickup truck. Now, first, I'd like to know if that's 47,000 more than what they already had budgeted for the minivans, or whether that's the whole price, but those are all administrative positions. The minivan is more than good enough for an administrative position. They don't need four-wheel drive pickup trucks with flashing bells and whistles on them. So.
Through the chair to Councillor Van Passen. Yeah, the reason these are under enhancement is you are correct. They were historically minivans, and why staff are asking for pickups. For instance, car 5 is the fire prevention officer, and there's investigations with fires, and that's why these trucks they're finding, when they go out to investigate, there's a certain amount of gear they have to carry. They have to carry their fire gear. At times they wear their bunker gear. They're under forced air. And it's the carcinogenics that are carried on the bunker gear. Years ago, volunteer firefighters would carry them in the back of their own cars and things like that. It's proven now that that's not acceptable practice. So with the pickup truck, they're not in the cargo van themselves. They can be in the back of the truck where the carcinogenics don't affect the driver. And also with the amount of gear they have to carry, at times the vans were overloaded, and where a pickup truck can carry a bigger load. So that's why we're asking for the minivan over the pickup, as well as some sites are, down in valleys, off in the fields and things like that, where the minivans couldn't go. So it's just a change in the way they do business. So that's the upgrade or the enhancement we're asking for.
Have these minivans reached the end of their life cycle, though, or is this an upgrade that's just required through, they can't carry the chemicals anymore?
Through the mayor to Councillor Taylor. Yes, these three vehicles are, again, there's a mechanic documentation that go along with them, and they've reached the set year limit that the county has. So we wouldn't be asking for these if these cars weren't at the end of their life cycle.
Counselor Van Passen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's one thing when I need a truck that I do something on a regular and recurring basis, but if once a year, once every 6 months, I need to take my certain doodad in the back of the truck, that I don't need a truck for that every day of the year. And again, and the chief especially, again, that's an administrative position. I cannot see any point in time where the chief is going to be the one rooting down through the basement of a burned out house looking for the source of the fire. And again, I just don't understand why they need upgrades on this type of equipment for all of them.
Any questions? No answer to that? Okay.
I'm sorry through the chair, the councillor. I was just a comment. I was listening.
Okay, just before we had just finished off page 2-34, moving into the new capital.
Sorry, I think Counselor Van Passen, see your hand wiggling still?
I'm sorry through the chair. I was talking to Nikki here. Could I get the councillor to repeat that question? Through the chair, that is, could I have a number on that? I've just lost my place here. through the mayor to the councillor. Yes, this is if I can just have a moment with Nikki here. Yeah, sorry about this. Electric ice resources. Okay, yeah. Yeah, okay. Through the chair to the councillor, I'm back on track here. Yes, this is, I mentioned last year, Waterford was our first electric ice resurfacer. That was our staff's intention that as the older gas-powered or propane Zambonis their life expectancy came due, that we would replace with electric. So the Dover ice surfacer is at the end of its useful life cycle, and this is the replacement, and we're going electric. So the 160 is for the total unit. I'll get a number on that, but I think it is about $25,000 difference. Through the chair to the councillor. I'll give a little background information. This is Donley Drive it's here in Simcoe, would be to the east of this woodlot, and the woodlot again is in east to the Oakwood Cemetery. And we've got the subdivision that was put in, and the issue that, and again, we won't point fingers at what should have been done at the time, but the lots were put in backed right up to the woodlot. So last year there was, I believe it was another $100,000 to cut 10 to 15 feet of the woodlot back because of this trees came up, they grew over the backyards. Obviously the excavator, when they dug the yards, had damaged the roots, and these larger trees were now hanging over people's backyards. So that was step one, was last year. Now that's been done. This is a little more cutting to do, as well as the perimeter fencing will stop the encroachments, because as soon as somebody lives on the back of a woodlot, that's where their wood clipping go, their compost go. We already have some sheds and things located there that we have to get our bylaw folks to move off. So it's probably should have been addressed with the development, but it wasn't, but this is to clean that up.
I have a question for Mr. Cridland. I'm just curious, you're deeply involved with the preparation of these budgets, correct?
Through the chair, some more than others. I mean, we have close to 500 line items, and this is where Mrs.
On your
Ms.
department
Sloat,
and so
yes,
on.
yeah. Ms. Sloat is probably more of an expert, but yes, I'm involved.
So arguably, I mean, staff includes these because they believe there's a necessity, correct?
To your worship, staff would do a necessity, or a lot of our budgets too are driven by user groups and things that come from the public.
Okay. So if it's in the budget and you've submitted that on behalf of your department, it's unlikely that your department or any other department would advocate for a cut to that particular capital expenditure.
To worship, no, that's true, because I think over the years with financial pressure on staff, I've been here 25 years in municipalities. They get tighter and tighter every year, and I can honestly say what we bring in now, we feel are bare bone budgets.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Michelli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is for staff. Mr. Cridland, I'm just going back for a second to the electric ice resurfacer in Port Dover. The regular propane-powered Zamboni is at the end of its useful life.
Through the mayor, that is correct.
Will it be put up for auction, or will it be scrapped?
It will be through the mayor to the councillor. It will be sold, and I know in the Waterford one there was actually a provision within the tender that the company could take the old machine for salvage parts and stuff. So either way, it's out of the county's inventory, and any money we get for that goes back to the fund or the reserve.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. On to section 2-2C, which are the proposals from staff regarding new capital initiatives, as mentioned earlier. The new capital initiatives will be items either to address growth or to expand services. The pages for the that area is 2-36 to 2-41. On the first page, on 2-36, that just wanted to mention, I had mentioned the hub, that we did have some funds included in this budget, and that is on the first page, and it's the top project. We called the project development costs. And you'll see again the barrier-free program when we get into employee and corporate services. Again, through the future years has a set amount set aside for barrier-free programs.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. I'm wondering if staff can provide information on Human Resource Information System, $400,000.
Through you, Ms. Mayor. So as I briefly, sort of when we were going through the orientation period for council, one of the things that I articulated as far as concerns for employee and corporate services and the corporation as a whole was the state of our human resources information system infrastructure, and I'll use that as a general term. Basically, in my assessment, being a new general manager to the organization, we're running a lot of systems across the organization, sometimes doing separate portions of work as part of what would come under the umbrella of human resources capital management. And that could be things like time and attendance tracking, performance appraisal tracking and performance management, time bank management, advanced reporting and analysis of human capital data, employee self-service of time absence request and approval, things like employee surveying, self-service of health and benefits management, compensation and payroll functionality. A lot of the systems that we're running across the organization are different. So as an example, the way that the paramedics do their scheduling is different than the way it looks like for salaried staff. We've got a different system for our fire department. The interconnections between those systems and how they flow to payroll. There's very little automation. There's very little ability for us to provide our management team with tools with which to manage the workforce, to be able to do attendance, absenteeism analysis without significant human work. So this is one of those items essentially is the realization that there's a lot of stuff we as a modern organization in 2019 should be able to do. A lot of our municipal comparators have significantly more robust systems that they can get a lot out of and a lot of values that can be put into both operational day-to-day management as well as analytics and reporting with which to drive decision making. So that's kind of my general overall commentary in that regard.
Thank you. So is it fair to just call this a software, or is this funding that you need to be able to accomplish those things? And is it a computer software, that program that you're purchasing to help you with that, or is
through you, Ms. Mayor, it's very much a software program that we're hoping to purchase, and the project sheet that's attached to this budget item, and I listed a variety of things. You hope to get a software program that will do as many of those things for you as possible, so that we don't have 20 or 25 different systems trying to feed into what I would generally describe as sort of human capital management. So a very simple action like getting a pay stub emailed to yourself as a counselor, as an example, requires 4 different systems for that to happen. There's one system that generates the pay stub, one system, a different system that actually sends you the email, a third system that does the timesheet component, and then a fourth system that's kind of the background ERP that's significantly more finance heavy. And that, in my position, should be one massive one that captures a lot of these functions. The ability to do that, depending on obviously how much you pay. There's organizations that pay millions of dollars to have that done, and this is a more sort of medium of the line ask in that regard.
And how much would a price on a program like this fluctuate versus looking at purchasing it next year or the following year after that?
I'm not sure if the statement surrounding price fluctuations is something that I could speak to, or sort of the director of IT to my right. But I can tell you from coming up with this particular price that you see in front of you, we actually did a request for information, and we put out to the marketplace what would software providers who provide these types of services, because there's quite a few of them, what would they charge for something like this? And the prices could go up as a million. So we kind of took all that information that we were provided, and there's about 8 or 9 of them by the end of it, and we look at all of that and we saw what was the sort of the medium line of best value for the dollar in terms of asking for that amount from council. As far as what it could vary from doing it tomorrow than doing it a year from now, I don't know if Brent wants to chime in on that piece.
Certain products could go up. All the software, usually there's an increase. The percentage, it all depends on the marketplace. Some of it, actually, if it's a U.S.-based company, also depends on the Canadian dollar. But it really depends on competition in the marketplace. You could have new companies come in that could come in with a lower price, or you could have companies be folded, like other companies buy up other companies, and therefore prices go up. So it's a crystal ball, really it is.
Councillor Geisens, I believe, is next.
What I'm looking at is page 236, and at the very bottom it talks about an electric vehicle pilot project. Can you tell me what that is? Somebody can tell me that is? It comes from Public Works, so somebody has to...
If I can take a first stab at that, earlier in the day, Mayor Chop had asked a question about leasing, and I didn't get a chance to give a fulsome answer to that. As I recall, that didn't get as far as an actual full council directive, i.e. passed motion that gets onto the comeback sheet. But staff speak up a little
sorry, bit? For some reason I can't hear it.
Last year, I did ask, and staff who report to Mr. Baird have begun working on some analysis with respect to both the fleet, ultimately with an eye to looking to the possibility of engaging with electric vehicles. This really comes about from a look at trying to reduce mileage costs. The last time a fleet analysis was done, electric vehicles weren't a thing. It wasn't possible to get something down to notionally, once you pay for the infrastructure, more or less no cost. So some analysis has been performed. The basic idea underlying this is to have one vehicle as a test for us. We are not, the number of municipalities in Ontario have initiated, City of London has a fairly large fleet of electric vehicles. Lambton County's gone over to a number of electric vehicles. And you can't use that in all instances. That doesn't work for tandem trucks. That doesn't work for bulldozers, etc. But it could, in theory, work for a number of our, I don't call them software applications, but applications with less manual labor involved. So this is meant to be a vehicle that will be used by staff, but to gather some data on the effectiveness and possible efficacy of looking to ultimately reduce corporate cost, if successful. And this is the pilot project, if you will. Start with one vehicle being able to charge in Delhi and here in Simcoe. And that should give the vehicle the capacity to cover the entire of Norfolk County. So that's the overall. That was our attempt to comply with the basic concept that was discussed by the previous council about trying to find ways to reduce costs. And this is a step
along our way in hopes of coming up with a way to cut a lot of cost out of our fleet in the future. That's the basic notion. With that, I turn it over to Mr. Baird for any more specifics.
Can you buy one of these for $60,000? Because some of those are very much more expensive than that.
Through the mayor, it's not a Tesla. It's probably like a Chevy Volt with the taxes. Yeah, that's true. As Mr. Cribbs has mentioned, there could be many applications that the county currently does, including building inspection or bylaw enforcement, carpooling, the ability to sign a vehicle out for a day or a week to do something county-related that we're not paying for personal mileage. And we're able to evaluate on a short term or, over a couple of years to see, can we incorporate EVs into our operation? From a cost perspective, I don't think they're much less expensive than a typical vehicle. They're certainly, in some cases, likely more. But overall in the life, is there lower operating costs and maintenance? And is it, again, doing the right thing for the environment, showing some leadership in that regard? So it is a pilot project that's been put forward, but hopefully that helps answer any questions.
Councillor Taylor?
With this being a pilot project, and we've heard that other municipalities already operate fleets of electric vehicles, do we need to run our own pilot project, or can we use the information from other municipalities, seek that out, do a cost analysis that way, not spend the $60,000 now and just make a larger investment later if we can have the information that the costing structures truly do work out?
Through the mayor, that's a great idea. At some point we were either going to jump in, but we could certainly communicate with the other municipalities that are doing something like that and bring something back, perhaps as part of this fleet rationalization, or if there's an opportunity, as Mr. Cribbs has said, to reduce mileage reimbursements and things of that nature. We could certainly do that.
Thank you, and I suppose at this moment I'd like to motion that we remove this pilot project initiative and direct staff to seek out other municipalities and attain the information that way. Or however I would, Andy, how should I word this motion? Do it as two?
Through you, Madam Chair, you could just do it as that the $60,000 electric vehicle pilot project be removed from the budget and that staff be directed to seek information from other municipalities.
Let's throw that into.
Would you like to add that, or
I said.
you want to add it?
Yes.
Okay.
So just that the pilot program and charging station in a combined amount of $75,000 be removed from the budget and that staff be directed to consult with other municipalities.
Okay. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Geisens? Discussions on the motion? Councillor Ravitz?
I would like to, thank you, Mayor Chop. I'd like to clarify that the charging station is in fact for the electric vehicle and not for our other electric services such as our Zambonis. This is for the vehicle charging bay. Is this correct?
Through the mayor, this is actually, would be used by this electric vehicle at either here or the Delhi building, but it's also, the station would be used for public use. So you see it, you see charging stations in cities and different locations. So it would be not just for the county, but for public consumption as well.
Understood. Thank you.
Councillor, sorry, I had a bunch here. Councillor Huffman, you were a long time ago, but then they put the motion on the floor. Would you like?
Actually, Councillor Taylor covered my issue.
Okay.
Perfect.
Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Chop. I was going to ask the exact same question as Councillor Rabbits and wondered if that was just worth mentioning as something for the municipality to investigate at a later date when we are in better financial health to offer those types of charging ports for the public.
Councillor Michelle.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just sort of wondering if it might be a good idea to keep the charging station in